Hello everyone and welcome to my Sister Wives For You channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The Brown family had weathered nearly 2 decades of upheaval, heartbreak, fractured relationships, and shifting loyalties, but nothing prepared them for the Thanksgiving eruption that would later be whispered about in Sister Wives circles as the moment Robyn Brown finally blew up the entire family dynamic, shattering whatever fragile threads were holding the plural clan together as 2025 approached. Because this year's holiday, the first since Kody Brown's total collapse of marriage stability, and the ongoing tensions between his adult children and his now-only wife, was already set to be uncomfortable, but no one predicted the emotional detonation Robyn would unleash at the very table meant to symbolize gratitude, unity, and healing. The day began with Kody insisting that everyone gather at his and Robyn's Flagstaff home despite Janelle, Christine, and Mary all politely suggesting neutral territory since the children were still uncomfortable with Robyn, but Kody was adamant that the family needs to accept reality, meaning accept Robyn as the only legitimate wife left standing, and while Christine declined the invitation entirely, choosing instead to host her own peaceful feast with David Woolley and several of her adult kids, Janelle hesitated but ultimately agreed to attend for the sake of her children who thought maybe things could be civil this year, though they walked in guarded. Knowing Robyn had been on edge for months, Mary showed up last, arriving quietly, almost as if she hoped she could slip in unnoticed, because despite her emotional detachment from Kody, she still clung to the idea of family, even if Robyn seemed allergic to sharing any emotional space with her, and from the moment the guests entered, the energy crackled. Kody pacing, Robyn hovering with a stiff smile she reserves for situations she feels she cannot control, the older kids whispering to one another. And then the tension rose even further when Robyn caught wind that several of the kids were talking openly about reuniting with Christine for dessert later that evening, which set her off internally, but she tried to keep composed until dinner began. The table was laid beautifully, the food was picture-perfect, and for 45 seconds everyone breathed as if maybe the holiday could pass without incident. But then Robyn cleared her throat and started giving a long, emotional speech about gratefulness. Except instead of warmth, it quickly turned into a guilt-soaked monologue about how she felt othered, disrespected, and deeply hurt that the family still treated her like an outsider, even though, according to her, she had done everything right, and that no one understood the amount of pressure she was under being the last wife left holding everything together. And at first Kody nodded supportively, though the kids exchanged looks that read, "Here we go again." But Robyn didn't stop. She grew more intense, her voice quivering, and she pointed directly at Janelle's kids, accusing them of sustaining a culture of blame and punishing her for Kody's failed marriages, and that none of them had tried to build a relationship with her because they chose their mother's narrative. The room shifted sharply as the kids straightened in their seats, stunned, and Janelle, normally the calm, diplomatic voice, gently asked Robyn to please not make this about the kids. But that only poured fuel on the fire, because Robyn launched into a fiery rant that she was tired of being the scapegoat for everything wrong in this family, and that people needed to stop rewriting history, insisting she never demanded more time, never manipulated Kody, never created a wedge, which made several of the adult children laugh in disbelief, igniting the moment things escalated from tension to explosion. Kody rose to defend Robyn, telling the children they were ungrateful, and suddenly the table split down the middle, with Robyn sobbing dramatically about being alone in a family that refuses to give her a chance, while the kids fired back that she never gave them a chance either, that she consistently isolated Kody and created division, and that she played victim every time anyone tried to hold her accountable. And as voices rose, Mary stepped in gently, trying to diffuse the conflict, only to have Robyn snap that Mary had no right to speak because she abandoned the marriage first, something that stunned everyone because Mary had been nothing but quiet all evening. That jab cracked the last piece of restraint in the room. Janelle stood up, furious, defending Mary and calling Robyn's behavior cruel and unnecessary, and the older kids rallied behind her, which only made Robyn cry harder as she shouted that this is exactly the bullying I'm talking about, while Cody, now irate, slammed his hand on the table, yelling that no one respects his wife, and that if they can't support Robyn, they can't claim to be part of his family. This ultimate declaration, implying that loyalty to Robyn was a requirement for inclusion, pushed Janelle's son Gabe over the edge, and he told Cody point-blank that the family used to be about unity, not obedience to one wife, and that Cody had created a hierarchy long before the divorce is finalized, and suddenly all the unresolved grief from the COVID fights, from Truly's custody drama, from financial disputes around Coyote Pass, from years of favoritism, burst forward. In one collective confrontation that left Robyn shaking with rage as she accused the entire family of ganging up on her. At that point, Robyn stood abruptly, tears streaking down her face, and declared that she was done trying, that she was tired of being blamed for everything, and that maybe Cody should rethink who he spends holidays with, before storming out of the dining room, slamming the door so loudly the candles on the table flickered, leaving a stunned silence behind her. Cody raced after her, leaving the rest of the family awkwardly frozen. But then another shock followed, shouting from a hallway as Robyn's voice echoed back into the room, yelling that she wanted everyone out of her house now, that she won't celebrate Thanksgiving with people who don't want her around, and the kids, still stunned, began gathering their belongings as Robyn continued her off-camera tirade from elsewhere in the house, while Cody tried to calm her, but his own anger remained simmering, and when he returned to the dining room, he didn't apologize or try to mend the moment. Instead, he coldly told everyone that it was best if they left, confirming the wedge Robyn had driven had officially cut through the last strands of the family bond. Janelle left first, shaking her head, telling the kids she was done with this chaos. Mary left in tears, whispering that she didn't know what she had expected, and the adult kids walked out quietly, carrying not leftovers, but the heavy realization that Cody and Robyn had fully isolated themselves from the rest. Once everyone was gone, Robyn reportedly locked herself in the bedroom, crying loudly enough that neighbors later said they heard screaming, and Cody spent hours trying to console her while simultaneously nursing his own wounded pride. But the fallout continued in the days that followed. The kids went public on social media with thinly veiled posts about toxic gatherings. Janelle told close friends she would never attend another holiday at Cody and Robyn's home again. And Mary confided that she felt attacked for no reason except existing, while Christine expressed no surprise at all, saying she had seen this coming for years, and fans speculated that the Thanksgiving meltdown marked the true, irreversible end of the Brown family as a functioning unit. Insiders claim Robyn later tried to spin the story, insisting she had simply been emotional and misunderstood, but multiple sources say she exploded because she could no longer control the narrative, no longer present herself as the misunderstood peacemaker. The facade cracked, revealing a much deeper resentment she had been carrying toward the rest of the family for years, and in that moment, everything finally boiled over. When producers reached out to the Browns after the holiday, several adult children reportedly refused to film, saying they were done letting Robyn weaponize their pain, and that unless the show addressed the real issues, Robyn's influence, Cody's favoritism, the emotional estrangement, they didn't want any part of the storyline, while others hinted that the Thanksgiving disaster might actually become the centerpiece of the next season because it was simply impossible to ignore how thoroughly Robyn's outburst had cracked the family open. In the weeks after the incident, Cody and Robyn were seldom seen in public, fueling speculation that the meltdown had backfired even for them, pushing Cody to confront the consequences of the division that he and Robyn consistently denied creating. But whether this moment becomes the final unraveling or merely another chapter in the ongoing Brown saga, one thing is clear. The Thanksgiving blow-up wasn't just a family fight. It was the culmination of years of resentment, denial, favoritism, emotional isolation, and deep fractures that could no longer be ignored, leaving fans stunned, the family scattered, and Robyn standing at the center of a storm she herself had unleashed. In the aftermath of the Thanksgiving blow-up that left the Brown family fractured in ways even years of plural marriage tension had never achieved, The ripple effects continued spreading through Flagstaff like shockwaves nobody could fully brace for, because while the initial explosion ended with slammed doors and stunned silence, the emotional debris kept falling for days as each member tried to process how Robyn's outburst had not only derailed a holiday, but exposed the painful truth of how unsustainable the family dynamic had become, especially now that she and Cody stood alone on one side of a line the rest of the family refused to cross anymore. The morning after the fight, insiders say Cody woke with a mix of fury and fear, angry that his kids had disrespected Robyn, but also terrified that this time the divide might be permanent, and though he attempted to call Janelle's kids to set the record straight, they allegedly ignored his messages, feeling too drained to re-enter the emotional battlefield so soon, while Janelle herself refused to pick up, telling a close friend she had reached her limit, with Cody's refusal to see how his loyalty imbalance had created a family he no longer controlled. Meanwhile, Mary, who spent the night replaying Robyn's sharp words over and over, wrestled with sadness more than anger because although she had already emotionally moved on from the marriage, being told she had no right to speak at a table she once helped build cut deeper than she expected, and she spent the next day posting cryptic but heartfelt quotes about self-worth and walking away from places where your presence is constantly misunderstood, which fans quickly interpreted as a response to the Thanksgiving disaster. On the other side of town, at Christine's home, the mood was somber yet validating, as several of the adult kids gathered for leftover dessert and shared their feelings, expressing not just anger at how Robyn lashed out but relief that the truth had finally exploded into the open, with Isabel, Gwendolyn, and even Logan reportedly saying that the holiday meltdown proved what they had been saying for years, that the family couldn't heal because Robyn treated every disagreement as an attack and Cody treated every criticism of Robyn as betrayal, and while Christine tried to comfort her kids, she also admitted privately to David that she wished the family could have at least one peaceful holiday together for the sake of the grandchildren, though she suspected that kind of unity was gone for good. Even more unsettling was the fact that Robyn didn't seem aware of how severe the fallout had become, because according to a source close to the family, she spent most of the next day crying in her bedroom, insisting she had been the victim and that everyone ganged up on her, demanding Cody take action to ensure the kids apologized, unaware that the kids were already telling friends they had no intention of ever setting foot in her house again, and Cody, caught between his desire for loyalty and the realization that alienating his children completely could cost him relationships he still valued, paced the house in frustration, torn between soothing Robyn and confronting the consequences of years of favoritism he refused to admit existed. To make matters worse, TLC producers began requesting statements from everyone involved, hoping to capture reactions for the show, but many of the kids declined, saying they didn't want the narrative twisted into a storyline that would make them look cruel or disrespectful, and some even feared that Robyn would once again frame herself as the misunderstood victim, just as she had done during past conflicts, prompting them to avoid filming altogether unless producers promised not to manipulate the footage, a demand the network wasn't sure it could meet. As the hours passed, the family text group, once a lifeline during more unified times, went silent except for short, logistical messages about upcoming birthdays and custody schedules, and Janelle reportedly removed herself completely, saying she needed distance from chaos, while Robyn became increasingly paranoid, asking Cody whether the kids were plotting against her or trying to turn public opinion, the way she claimed they had done since Christine left, accusations that only widened the emotional gulf between her and the rest of the family. By the third day after the meltdown, the tension had spilled into the wider community, with neighbors whispering about the shouting they'd overheard, social media buzzing with cryptic posts from the adult kids, and longtime fans expressing heartbreak that the Brown family, once a symbol of plural marriage cooperation, had reached a point of no return, and though Cody attempted to spin the narrative privately by saying the fight was simply a family disagreement, even he couldn't deny that something fundamental had snapped, because the kids' distance felt colder, Janelle felt more final, and Mary's sudden emotional withdrawal signaled that for the first time in years, she no longer felt tied to the idea of fixing the family. As for Robyn, She alternated between devastation and indignation, crying that no one respected her but also insisting she had done the right thing by calling out bad behavior. And at night she and Cody argued quietly about whether the family should extend an olive branch or whether they should protect their peace by severing ties until the others came around, a suggestion that horrified Cody at first, but then increasingly appealed to him as he simmered in resentment toward the kids he didn't want to admit he had pushed away. But what truly solidified the long-term consequences was when Aurora and Brianna, who had always felt uncomfortable around the older kids, told Robyn they didn't want them coming over anymore because they felt attacked, further fueling Robyn's conviction that she had done nothing wrong and was simply protecting her children, a stance that made reconciliation nearly impossible. By the end of the week, the Browns were functioning as two entirely separate units, Cody and Robyn on one side, isolated but united, and the rest of the family on the other, wounded but strangely relieved to have clarity. And as the dust settled, one reality became undeniable. Thanksgiving didn't just unravel a holiday, it marked a permanent break in the family that may never heal.